Felicity from GetYourRockOut, talking to the incredible Devin Townsend. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. I feel good.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Are you not horribly stressed? I mean, you've got the Retinal Circus coming up in less than a week's time.
You know, I was actually talking to some friends about, like, the stress for any of these big things that we're doing. It's going to happen whether or not I'm stressed, you know? So I might as well not be.
That's a really good way of looking at it.
Because it's going to happen either way, right? So, you know, whether or not I'm sick or healthy or stressed or relaxed is going to happen. So I might as well, you know, so I've got coffee and, you know, a thing of beans and I'm good to go.
What kind of beans are they?
You know those edamame beans, you know, those Japanese ones? Yeah,
nice.
soybeans, I guess. But, no, it's good. It was at, you know, Marks and Spencer, some 2 for £3 sort of thing.
Well, there you have it.
Yeah.
Glowing recommendation.
Yeah.
So, as I said, you've got Retinal Circus coming up in less than a week. What can you tell us about it? I know the script has been kept hugely under wraps.
Well, yes and no. I mean, it's like, okay, so essentially what I want to do in the future is make theatrical things. And I want to be able to, like, get enough capital happening that we can make shows of the same sort of production style as, like, any of those Katy Perry kind of, you know, like any of the sort of pop stuff that's over the top, but I want to do it with sort of bizarro heavy music, right? And I find that the more that we do it and the longer that we do it, we're finding there's more people that have an interest in seeing that happen, right? So with Retinal Circus, we sort of had an offer from the management that said, well, why don't we start? We don't have like a huge budget, but we can try and put together something. What would you do, right? And I thought, well, essentially, at this point of the career, we're putting together sort of like a high school musical sort of vibe, right, where you've got like a scrappy band of miscreants that are trying to put this stuff together. And at this point, we've got 25 some odd records of stuff that I've done. So we figured the best way to start would be to sort of use the arc of how the records have gone and make sort of a story about that, right? So for me, the way I've written music has always been, well, whatever frame of mind I'm in is going to be what the music ends up being, right? So if I'm at one point in my life that's dark or light or happy or whatever, there's going to be music that's going to represent that. So we decided with this Retinal Circus that we'd take whatever budget we had and we would use the music from the past 25 records or whatever and make sort of a story out of it that is fun while still sort of having a point to make. And everybody who's gotten on board with it, we've got like circus performers and additional musicians and like the management and the label and, you know, musicians and the audience. And to be fair, your guess is as good as mine as to how it's going to end up, right? But the fact that everybody's like wants it to work is a good thing, right? Because then there's a good possibility that whether or not it's an epic success or an epic facepalm, it's going to be interesting, right? But I think the only way we can go about this stuff at this point, whether or not it's music or interviews or life in general, is, I mean, if we take it too seriously and if we stress about it, it's just not going to be any fun, right? So we just want to have a good time. And this whole Retinal Circus thing, as vague as that just was, is about all the records, the arc in which my career has gone, but at the end of it, we're just trying to have a good time, right? And I think that's a good thing for anybody who comes, right? Like, who wouldn't want to have a good time?
I think it's going to be absolutely exceptional. I must admit, I'm hugely looking forward to it.
Me too, to be honest, right?
No, I mean, what's the most challenging part for you to have kind of brought it all together?
Well, I mean, again, to be fair, a lot of it is me bringing it together, but I mean, I've got so many people that are helping, right? Like, you know, Paul Cullis, who's been our tour manager and front of house guy, he's just put in so much effort, and the band and the circus performers and the actors. And there's an old story I remember hearing about, like, nail soup. I always like referring to that, where, you know, a guy rolls into the middle of town and he doesn't have any food, so he just sets up a cauldron and, like, drops a nail into it. And anytime someone comes by and asks him what he's making, he's like, oh, I'm just making nail soup, right? And people are like, well, you can't make that without potatoes, right? So they start chucking potatoes into it. And then someone else is like, well, you know, you can't make that without tomato. And then by the end of it, everybody's made something that's like way more than the original person had planned, right? And in a lot of ways, that's what I kind of feel about this whole Retinal thing. Everybody who's put in effort into it is just going so far above and beyond it. But ultimately, everybody's going that far above and beyond it because we all just want to have a good time. I mean, everybody's miserable, right? You know, it's like, so to have like a focus that allows us to make something that's like fun and cool and creative allows us all to sort of, you know, it's great. And I think those sort of things are exactly what I'm hoping to be able to continue to do, right? Because I want to have a good time. Because the rest of life is the hard part. You know, music and shows and all that stuff should be fun. It should be creative. It should be an escape for everybody to, you know, sort of invest this sort of creative energy into it, right? And that's it, you know?
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So hopefully this one's going to go utterly wonderfully and we'll get to see a lot more.
Yeah, well, that's the hope, right? That's the hope is like after this one, you know, people see it and say, hey, you know what? If you do this again, I got an idea of how we can, you know, and I was like, and then hopefully by the end of it we'll have like a 700-foot Ziltoid, you know, that'll like inflate halfway through the show and dispense cheeseburgers into the audience, right?
Well, I hope to see that. And to be honest, if it all goes horribly wrong, all you need to do is pretend you meant it to happen.
Well,
and nobody will know any different.
I've been doing that with my records for 20 years. Right? Well, that's it, exactly. It's like whether or not it goes one way or the other, it's going to be fun, right? Like,
absolutely.
And I think, again, if we take it too seriously, if we expect it to be, you know, like West End sort of musical sort of thing, and, you know, and we've got, like, you know, beach balls full of puppets or whatever, it's like, you know, it's you're setting yourself up for a disappointment. But I have a feeling that it's going to be a lot of fun for all of us, right, including the people who come to the show.
No, absolutely. I cannot wait.
Me neither.
So let's talk about Epicloud.
Sure.
Amazing. I mean, just fantastic.
Thank you. That's awesome.
It was just, I think so many people were looking forward to it so much, but saying, can you actually do anything to top the previous stuff? And it just slammed it.
Well, thanks.
So,
yeah.
Where do you go from here? It was done in a happy frame of mind.
Well, you know, I think that's the thing about Epicloud that's actually a misconception, right? Because a lot of people say, oh, you know, you were just like in a real positive frame of mind when you were making it. But I mean, it was no different than the other ones. I just think that the difference with Epicloud is, you know, I think you have to kind of like fight to maintain that frame of mind. And I think that's what the whole point, if there is one, of this record is that, you know, you're responsible for your own frame of mind in a lot of ways, regardless of how much BS you're thrown by, you know, the sort of gloomy nature of everything else in the world, right? Like, you kind of have a choice to make whatever you're going to make. And so Epicloud is hopefully like a statement about, well, you know, things aren't perfect and things aren't, you know, happy and glossy all the time, but we're going to go out of our way to make something that is that, because that's what we want to hear, right? And I think that's the same thing with Retinal Circus, right? It's very, I find it's easy, you know, all I have to do is go online for a couple minutes and I'm just like, oh, now all I want to write is just horror music, right?
Completely.
But I think it's like, you know, Epicloud is not indicative of just, you know, my life being perfect as much as just like, well, let's go out of our way to make something that you know is pleasant, I guess, or whatever it is, right? But you know, even going back to the whole Retinal thing, there's not a lot that I've ever made that has been based on understanding what's going on. It's just like, well, let's try this. You know, it's like music for me has always just sort of been the byproduct of what's going on in life, as opposed to, you know, the music leads the life, you know, it's the other way around, right? So completely. Yeah. It's a lot of work, I think, but it's the same thing again with Retinal, same thing with Epicloud, same thing with the people I choose to have in my life. You know, it takes work to not focus on the doom and gloom of it all, right? But there it is. And you've kind of included a huge array of stuff in it. I mean, you had a gospel choir, you had strings, you had horns. It was just amazing. Thanks. Well, I mean, again, it was like, you know, the whole point with this one as well is if you're going to do something like this, I think in the past, anytime I've tried to make any sort of statements, it's typically, you know, it's like, well, you just kind of put your foot into the water, you know, gingerly, right? But with this one, I was like, well, if you know you're gonna jump off that cliff, you know, you might as well try and do a backflip while you're jumping, right? As opposed to just sort of like stepping off, because it's the same thing as the retinal thing. You know, either way, you're falling, right? So you might as well like really go for it, right? So I think that was the thing with Epicloud. I was like, well, you know, if you're gonna make something that's as revealing as this, you know, put choirs and horns and bazookas and whatever, you know what I mean? Like go for it. And I guess, to be fair, it's like when it was finished and I first listened to it, I was just like, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like, was that the best decision, right? And I think even, you know, like the music that's going on now is a reaction to that. Like everything I'm writing now is really quiet, just because it's just kind of like, oh, you know, sort of like, you know, sort of retreating in a certain way, because Epicloud is just so like, you know, naked, right? But I mean, there it is.
Is that something you're going to carry on with through next release? Is it a theme that you're going to be continuing, or?
I have no idea.
Brilliant.
I have no idea. I mean, I wish I did know, because then I would be able to. I mean, I've been doing interviews for 20 years, and I read back on some of them, and I'm just like, you know, there you were there, and this is where you are now, and I have no idea. It's just all. It's all a reaction, I hope, to where or what decisions are being made in terms of life, right? And I think that the funny thing, though, is by doing interviews and by having to rationalize it and talk about yourself relentlessly as you do, you end up being forced to reflect on it. You know, because once Epicloud was done, I would have been happy to never have spoken about it. Just be like, there it is. You know, like, just don't talk about it, right? But as a result of having to talk about it and having to rationalize it and having to discuss it, like, I don't know, I guess it sort of forces me to confront the motivations for it. Yeah. And you know, even today, like the interviews that I've done today, I'm just like, well, maybe that wasn't a bad move. You know, maybe it wasn't as embarrassing as you should think it is, because, you know, there's some people who are really stuck on strapping or deconstruction or anything, right? And they don't want to hear a record like this, right? And, you know, they're definitely the vocal majority, right? And so I appreciate it. That's really, really nice.
And do you still kind of find it just as terrifying to release stuff that is so utterly personal?
Oh my God. Beyond what I can say. I mean, but the compulsion to do it is more than my fear of the embarrassment of it. So it seems to, like, you know, like I felt like, well, Epicloud was happening. I was like, oh, I got to do this. This is really an important thing for me to do, right? And then as soon as it was done, I was like, oh my God, now I'm going to have to talk about it, right? And then, so I mean, it was even with the, you know, it's like, and a lot of times, like when you get these, you know, like they Photoshop the crap out of the pictures now too, right?
Oh, so completely.
You know, it's like, you know, the 40-year-old, you know, dude that I am. Like I look at some of these pictures recently, and I'm like, that's not what I look like. You know what I mean? Like, you know, they can gloss up any picture, so you know you don't have jowls and you're not, you know, wrinkled, and you're like, wow, now I have to pretend like I'm that, right? Which I'm not, and it actually takes way more effort to pretend I'm something I'm not than just to sort of be like, well, here I am, right? So, in fact, it was like, you know, I did this little online video here for like the Lucky Animals thing where I kind of, you know, danced around and acted like an idiot, and it's gotten more attention than I would have probably preferred, right? But on the positive side of that is now you don't have to pretend, you know, that you're not that. You know, you're like, well, now people know, right? So maybe ultimately it's more liberating to not have to, like, you know, pretend I'm either like hardcore or, you know, or a 20-year-old when I'm not, right? So yeah, maybe that's it, right? Maybe that's the whole point of it all is to, like, you know, there's the less that you perhaps have to hide or pretend about yourself artistically, then the easier it is just to be like, okay, well, forget about it. You know, here's where I'm going next, right? And, you know, I don't know where I'm going next. I don't know where I'm going tomorrow, to be honest. But
it's often the best way to be.
That's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm banking on, at least, right? So.
And you're working on Ziltoid 2 at the moment.
Yeah.
And I've seen you quoted as saying that there isn't actually much from Ziltoid in it.
Yeah.
So that's quite impressive.
Well, you know what? Okay, well, here's the thing is the way that music tends to, appear for me is it's I start with an idea, and then I'll tell everybody about it. I'm oh, it's this and this and this and this. And then when it finally comes out, I remember the label always being confused. I remember saying, with Accelerated Evolution, I'm oh, it's going to be a bunch of pop songs, and it's acoustic and all this stuff. Because that's where the inception of the idea was. And then when it came out, it wasn't that. But it was sort of an evolution of that. And that's where I kind of follow it. So, I'll throw a bunch of things out on Twitter or whatever, and I'll be oh, I'm doing this, and it's about this and this and this. And then when it finally comes out, it's totally different. And people are well, how did that happen? I'm I don't know, actually. It's just one thing led to another. And so Z Squared at this point and Casualties at this point are both undetermined. Z Squared's it's very pointed and very direct, and it's very intense, right? And it's dark, but it's not dark in a way that I'm familiar with. It's a lot more I don't know. And Casualties ends up being which in speaking about Epicloud makes sense now. It's it's all retreated. It's all hidden in the shadows kind of thing, right? Which I guess in terms of how revealed Epicloud is makes sense now that I'm saying it out loud, right? But as a result of doing both those two, it'll be interesting to see where Z Squared ends up, right? It might end up being a very flippant sort of creative thing with Ziltoid and a puppet show and TV stuff and everything, or that might just be an element of it, Because now I start seeing the layout a certain way, and it's just I had this idea the other day. I was oh, it has to be like that, right? But I'll just let it evolve, right? And hopefully, whatever decisions I make as a person are going to be, healthy enough that it's not going to end up in a place that's going to be just, really difficult, right?
I think whatever happens with it, it's going to be pretty exceptional.
It's going to be what it is, and at this point, it's epic. It's just really, really. There's no pop at all. Wow. And there's no. There was I tried to crowbar a bit of the humor into it, and then all of a sudden I was no, that's not what it wants to be yet. Maybe eventually it will be there. But I did a bunch of Ziltoid voices on part of it, and I was rah, rah, But then all the rest of the music is just so serious that it just seemed like I was kind of forcing the Ziltoid thing, right? Wow. So, but I never really know until the end. It was the same with Epicloud. I didn't know until the last 2 weeks what it really wanted to be, right? And so it's all speculation at this point, I think.
That's incredible. And you'd also, quite a while ago you talked about kind of having a Ziltoid TV.
Yeah.
Is that something that's still in the pipeline?
More so than him being a part of the record, actually. It's because I want to do a puppet show, and I love, ever since I saw The Dark Crystal when I was a kid, right? I just want to do that. But, at first I was, the first Ziltoid record was more music that was there for me as almost as an excuse for me to make puppets, right? But maybe what will happen with Ziltoid is maybe, and this is just speculation again, maybe it'll turn into an internet show that has music that illustrates the show, right? Wow. And then maybe Z Squared will end up just being this musical that is just this uncompromised because what seems to be coming out in terms of that stuff is just really pointed, because Epicloud is revealing in a lot of ways, but it's really bouncy and poppy and rock, right? So the Z Squared stuff I've been writing is just very I don't know, it's intense. We'll see where it goes. I'm not sure. In fact, I'm following it, as much as anybody, and am as surprised or horrified or excited as much as anybody else is, right?
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing the finished product.
Me too. Yeah, my fingers are crossed that it's, something that's healthy.
Definitely. And you recently cancelled the idea of having a ghost too.
Yeah. Well, that's funny with that because I write so much music that if I lose my my momentum on it, then I just don't have any interest in it. So with Epicloud, I said, hey, I've got a ton of other songs, and they were like, well, why don't you just release it slowly? And I'm like, well, when I did that with Ghost, I just lost interest in it, and all that music got kind of taken over by the Epicloud music. So thankfully with Epicloud, we just did a double disc, right? And eventually the Ghost 2 stuff will come out. But I think from here on out, I'm just, whatever I write for a certain period of time, I'm just going to release it all. And then, then at least it'll still have that same vibe, right?
Brilliant. There's so much going on. I mean, you've got your Epic Industrialist tour later this year.
Yeah.
As well, which I think that's going to be amazing. Really.
I haven't even thought about that one yet. I've been so hung up on the whole retinal thing that I keep forgetting that we've got like 2-month tour after it, right?
No, obviously, sadly, Stylosis has pulled out.
Yeah.
Which is gutted. Have you got a replacement?
There's a whole bunch of them, right? Like, I mean, Stylosis was the original one, and I guess I got, like a better tour, right? So it was, interesting. But at the same time, I mean, good for them. And there's been a bunch of bands that have been announced for different territories, and it all seems to be really cool. But again, I honestly just believe that, again, like with these tours and with the bands, it's what's going to happen is going to happen, and you just got to make sure that you and the people who are involved with what we're doing just do the best that we can and try and make a fun show for everybody, right?
Yeah. Do you find it hard? You work so much, and you're trying to juggle family life as well. Is it a constant battle?
Yeah, and I mean the interviews are the hardest part about it, right? Because you're accountable for everything that you say, right? And just every day you just wake up in a different frame of mind. Sometimes you got to pee, sometimes you got to, sometimes you're distracted, sometimes you're in this frame of mind or another. But just relentless amounts of interviews, it becomes your identity publicly, right? And I do work constantly, but at the same time, it's like a compulsion for me because music for me is, it's the easiest part of my life. Like writing and recording music, if that's all I had to do, that'd be a dream. If I could just sort of sit in the corner and play my guitar, then that's perfect. But that element of what I do is like 5% of my life. The rest of it is emails and, traveling takes up a huge amount of my time, right? And navigating jet lag versus being public and all these things, right? Like, I mean, that's the job, right? Actually, one of my favorite quotes is that you don't get paid to play live, you get paid for the 23 hours other than that a day that you're like waiting in lines and, doing customs and all that sort of stuff, right? Like, that's the job, right? Music is a dream, right?
Can you ever see yourself getting to a stage where you're thinking, actually, I've just had enough of this now and retiring from the public eye? Oh,
I'd love to in terms of that, but it's my reason for wanting to retire from the public eye is just because I get embarrassed by myself, right? But again, my compulsion to make music and play shows and do this stuff is stronger than my lack of desire for being embarrassed, right?
Oh, good. No, I mean, obviously we hope that we're going to have you around for a lot longer.
Well, I do love it. I love it, and I really like it when people enjoy it, right? But I mean, I just find that what comes with the job at this point is just like, it's being sick of yourself, right? And being embarrassed of yourself and all these sort of things, right? And it's like, because, you see yourself talking and you hear your words or you read your words or you see some picture and you're just like, oh my God, I'm a fucking moron, right? But it's like, but it's part of it, right? In order to do this, that's a huge part of it is like being public. So I don't think you can have one without the other. I think, if I want to do these things, which I do think are like awesome, like the opportunity to do this retinal thing and the opportunity to make these records and be involved with these people and make puppet shows. If I want to do that, which I really, really do, then you kind of gotta do that, right?
Yeah.
So you just kind of got to grit your teeth and go for it. And the bigger it gets, and the more attention it gets, to be honest, the more fun it is, right?
Yeah.
So
I guess on the flip side, it must be pretty amazing knowing that you're an inspiration for so many kids growing up.
Well, I don't know if I spent too much time thinking about that, right? Like all this stuff. You're talking about doing the cannonball. A lot of it, you can't pay attention to the praise. You can't pay attention to the criticisms.
Yeah.
You can't, because as much as you'd like to, as much as it would be great to read interviews that make you feel good about yourself, or reviews. At the same time, if you accept that, you're going to have to accept the ones that just well, this guy's a douchebag.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's so you kind of just got to take it all with a grain of salt, right? But I think that if you can learn to do that, which you can, specifically if you're surrounded by friends and good people, if you can learn to not take it that seriously, then I think you're golden, right? And then all the press and all the embarrassment that comes with just being privy to your own idiocy all the time, right? Is just part of it, right? And if you just don't read it, if you don't look at it, and just continue to do it, then the desire to make these things is much stronger for me than the embarrassment of it, right?
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk
thank you for the support. It's really, really awesome.
It's been wonderful. Any last words for your fans out there?
Well, let me think. Any last words? I gotta pee. I really do. So I'm going to do that.